So today what I would like to share with you is something that helped me daily as a game user researcher and something I wish I knew before. But before that, let's introduce myself. I work at Asmodee, one of the biggest and the greatest editor and publisher on board games, digital games also. Before that, I was working at Ubisoft and Decathlon. I have also some consulting staff for other companies. And I'm doing research on a specific way because I have an engineering background. That means the way I work is very scientific and a little bit special. Let's see. And today I would like to share my experience around one question: how to leverage your game user research with text mining. In fact, maybe now you don't know what is text mining, but I hope at the end of this conference you will know how to apply it. But before that, let me explain how did I fall in love with data. It was in 2012 and I was working at Decathlon, and my manager let me 6 months to prove that it's useful and efficient, and we need to invest in user research. So I start working and ask myself, what does user think about our product? And I start reading all the review on internet. It's like more than 100,000 reviews, so I start reading it. And in fact, after one day of reading, I start being confused because review was contradictory and I didn't know how to conclude. So as usual, when I feel confused, I asked my lovely data scientist husband to help me. And he told me, why don't you use data mining? At the time, I didn't know what it means. So today, I will speak about this, but first, let me introduce what is data. So I know that tomorrow there is a masterclass on data, but just a short introduction about it. Data is everything that you created while you are using devices. For example, each day, humanity are creating more than 36 billion posts on the social network. It's huge, and it's not going well with the 5G is coming and Internet of the Things. When I work as a consultant and I help brands to improve the user research, I start asking one question: what are you doing with the data? And I realize that many companies are doing nothing with the data. Some companies, as Ubisoft, are using data to describe with data analytics and game analytics. But what's interesting the most is how to explain and how to predict. And in fact, I realize that what companies are doing with data is correlated with the level of maturity and user knowledge. So when I say predicting, it's not science fiction. If you look at what Facebook is doing today with your metadata on your phone, they are able to predict your future behavior. Maybe you heard about Cambridge Analytica, but also Google already know what I will write on my mails, and even faster than I will think. So what is text mining? Text mining is when data is a text. It can be review, it can be user-generated content, or anything you can find. And in fact, it's a very complex field, and today I would like to share 3 ways to use text mining to leverage your game user research. First one will be how to improve your user experience on your games. The second one will be how to classify a menu or games. And the last one will be how to work on your wordings and words. First one, 2 years ago I was working at Ubisoft Montpellier on Just Dance, and my goal was to improve the user experience of Just Dance. And in fact, this project didn't start well. First of all, because I never played to this game before, so a shame. And I was running out of time and budget. So what I did like everyone, when you don't know something, I asked Google, and I found many useful data on YouTube. It was surprising. If you see here, this song, New Face from C, I didn't know this song, it's the first time I hear about this, but on internet you see there is more than 1 million views of this and lot of comments. So I extract it, so I have extraction of all the reviews on YouTube about Just Dance. And when you have text extraction, you can do many things. First thing is occurrences. Occurrences is how often does the word appear. It's linked to frequency. Let me explain. On Just Dance, we can see that all the comments were speaking about the dance and the choreo, and some comments were speaking about artist name. So when a word is frequent, means that it's important for player, because I speak about this. But you can also do co-occurrences, mean how often 2 words appear at the same time. Here, for example, you can see that each time a consumer says love or like, the next word will be song, and the next song after that will be artist name. So obviously, maybe because they love the song of the artist, but we have also other explanation. Here, for example, like si te sabes todas las canciones de Katy Perry. So here, she want people to like if they know the songs from Katy Perry. So you have also, when you are doing this job, to always question yourself, what is the meaning for user? Then, after co-occurrences, you can also do correlation. Correlation is how much a word and a phenomenon are related. Let me explain with positive evaluation. So here you have all the words on Just Dance that are related to positive evaluation. Fun, easy, aesthetical, artist. And on the other side, you have all the other words that are linked to negative evaluation. Dance, ridiculous, song, and moves. So with this, it's very precious because you can do, the Lyosa matrix is a tool I use every day with people I work with because it helps to decide. Here, you can write all the positive evaluation. For example, aesthetical is always when you are speaking positively about a track. This is a bonus feature. Then you can write your prerequisite feature, negative, for example, evaluation, menu. Menu means if it's not okay, people will complain. Positive evaluation, if it's positive, people will be more satisfying. And you have the key and motor feature here because it's appear in both negative and positive review, for example, song. And also you have to think about all the words that people are not using. For example, maybe we could expect that people will speak about the avatar, but they didn't. So you should ask, is it useful or not to work on this kind of feature? And in fact, on this Lyosa matrix, you can help your brand and your producer to work on what is really important for user, and just with text mining. So the last one that is very useful when you are doing text mining is cluster, is how similar the words are between two games. Let me explain. We saw, for example, that between Animals and That Power songs, the words were really similar. So mean people, when they express themselves about a track, express the same feeling, the same importance of the things. So, one other thing that is great on Just Dance is that teaser of the track and the song appears few months before the final release. So we have time to analyze all of this, or the review. And here, for example, you can see on Animals, if we compare to Cake by the Ocean, we can see that the number of views is different. So if the number of views is important, means the interest is important. And if you are looking to the ratio between dislike and like, you have also an idea about which track will be preferred. So, to conclude, my conclusion was, put the highest ratio and the most used song at the beginning of the playlist. So this way people will be satisfied when they start playing the game. In fact, on Just Dance, we see that there is an engagement problem because when people buy the game, they just play 4 times to the game and then they don't play anymore. So if you want to improve engagement, we have to work on this. Then you can also create it playlist by similarity. Means you are using track. If you like this one, it's a high chance that you will like also this one. And you can use the Lyosa matrix as a decision tool for feature and MVP. Instead of, okay, producer is not okay with game designer, then you have the user that explain you what they are expecting. So what was great on this project is first, it didn't cost anything. It was free. Then it took us 3 hours. We start on the morning at 9, we finished at 12. And results were very reliable compared to data analytics and interview we did after this game. So you can see that with data, you can really improve your game user research. You can, here I take the example from review on YouTube, but you can also create your own text. For example, if you make an online study, you can create open-ended question or ask a player to complete sentences on Twitter, maybe. You can use your user test verbatim. You can take the text from blog and forum. You can also analyze whatever video on YouTube and comment. So before going to the second part about classification, I want to ask you one question. What kind of game is Zelda Breath of the Wild? Yeah, you can try. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Other idea? Adventure, action, RPG, open world. We can have many things. So let me go deeper. In fact, today I'm very lucky because I work at Asmodee, and even stakeholders have a user-centric approach. So this is great. There is no need to convince people that it's useful to listen to our consumer. And as we have thousands and thousands games, my target this year is to know how to classify our game for our players. So I first doing a benchmark. So I look what Google Play, what Steam, what the brand was saying as a classification. And in fact, I start feeling a little bit disturbed because, for example, here Mario Kart Tour, they told me is an action game. And for me, it was a racing game. So I start having an argument with my colleagues. So I stopped doing this because brand and forum classification don't fit at all with player words, perception, and knowledge. If you are speaking with a casual gamer, or even core gamers, they have to learn the way of classification. So I start doing card sorting, open card sorting, and I ask people in both US and France to classify game. And in fact, what I discover is that people are very creative while doing this. I have categories that are amazing, such as play I play when I want to argue with people, play I play when it rains. So we have many ways to classify the game. And in that core gamer, there are thousands and thousands categories of strategy, pure strategy, co-op strategy, and so on. So I stopped doing this. So what I did, as usual, I do text mining. What I did concretely was, I take 200,000 reviews based on 12,000 games. So it's a huge quantity. And I feed my algorithm with him. And then I do a dendrogram. If you're not familiar with this, I will explain. So here you have all the game. I cut it. And it's a cluster based on word similarity. Means if the games are close together, it's very similar. And if they are far on this representation, means that they are very different for users. So I just take the reviews. And what we discover is that the first cluster separates very precisely DLC and extension from the other game. Then we have a cluster here that separates casual game and core game. But my algorithm didn't know what is a core game, what is a DLC. It just takes the word from user to classify. And it was great because the board game, we obtained 17 different categories. We rename it and we test it on user with card sorting, and it worked. People were able to go to this classification. And if we take an example, so here I have a focus on two games, Les Colocs and Munchkin. Our algorithm say, oh, it's similar for user. And what was great on this project is that even YouTube is doing the same. I mean, if you are looking for Les Colocs, YouTube will also suggest you Munchkin. So it was very relevant. And to answer to your question, what is Zelda Breath of the Wild kind of the game? So today, have a look about what Amazon is doing, because when you read the comments, they extract from the review, and you can see that the best way to describe Zelda is open world chef-d'oeuvre. By saying this, people are more able to choose this game and to understand what is behind the game. I take another example of one of our games, Exploding Kitten. With all the words I have here, it's easy for me to know if this game is for me or not. If you say me it's an adventure or party game, this doesn't give me information to choose. So this was great also. And today also have a look on what is Steam doing. And you know that classification today, they are not using adventure action, because we can have a lot of debate and argue. They are using the word from players to describe, like RPG in group or classical RPG. So this was for classification. I start this talk speaking about predicting behavior. Just let me explain deeper. Here is what Facebook is doing. They are able to predict your personality using metadata and to push you advertising according to your personality. For example, if you are an extrovert, you will have this kind of picture. And if you are an introvert, you will have this kind of picture. And in fact, this just increases the conversation rate. So it works. How did Facebook notice that? In fact, they asked 86,000 people to release the Big Five. And analyzing this, they also compare with all the posts like you have. And in fact, they found a huge correlation between the word you are using and your personality type. Let me explain. Here on this side, you have all the words that extrovert people are using. For example, tonight, party, love, and so on, emoji. And here you have all the words that people are using when they are more introvert. So for example, probably, computer, apparently, and so on. So speak to me, I can guess your personality profile. So as I say, the words you are using are linked to your personality. You can analyze what people say to you in order to guess their personality. This morning I tried to do it with the two first talk, and it was quite clear that the word that the first person was using, Stefan, was more introvert word, and the word that the other person was using was more extrovert word. So it was nice to see this. And also, you can write the best word for your user. If your user are more introvert, you know which word will make sense for them. In fact, word activates your brain. If I say to you lavender, in your brain there will be sparkle on your olfactive area. And if I say to you hammer, it will be sparkle also in your sensory motor area. So this is a theory I really like. It's called embodied cognition theory. Please have a look on this, it's very interesting. And a few years ago, I was working here when I work at Decathlon, and we did a study to understand this phenomena based on our world. So we did thermal facial analysis, electrodermal activities, and also we look with eye tracking, and we give a set of words to our consumer, and we know that the way you choose a sport is really linked to your personality. So here, for example, we noticed for sure that users didn't react the same way to the same word, but what was interesting between CrossFit and yoga is what the word that like sweat, effort, or pain was very positive for people that practice CrossFit, like they're enjoying a lot, but for yoga people, they don't react at all at this word. So we can also check it and work on your vocabulary to improve your games. Here is also another thing that I use very frequently. You have here valence, arousal, and frequency. Valence is how much positive or negative is a word. For example, rejected is negative, and triumphant is very positive word for you. Arousal is how much strong is this emotion. For example, here betray is strong emotion, but poverty makes you react less. And frequency is how frequent in your vocabulary is this word. So when I work on reward, for example, you can choose the word that, creates positive emotion, high arousal with high frequency. So this will help users. How do I apply this on game? In fact, when I work on a project, I always ask which words are better. So for example, here on Gloomiven, is it tutorial or didactician more efficient? Is it encounter a frequent word that people are using? And in fact, when you are choosing the most used word, for example, you can increase the recognition, the memorization, and also decrease the cognitive load. Because for people, it's easy to catch the word you are using. So using this kind of tool, you are able to improve your game user experience. So to conclude, I would like to help you to make it happen in your brain, even if you are alone and even if you are a beginner or student. First, just know that you can do it at any stage of the process. It can be when you are doing user research, beta testing, after release, whenever you want. Who can do this? You can do it alone if you are brave, but I suggest you work with a data scientist or a software that can help. Where you can find text. You can even use Wikipedia, for example, and I will show you an example. And how you can use an application or a software. An example. We can have a huge debate about what is UX. I have my own definition, maybe you have yours. But how can I solve this issue? Maybe you can extract all the Wikipedia definition. You just paste it on hardware. It can't automatically the word. And then, for example, you can see that compare French and English version, because French definition of UX is not the same that the English definition. And here you can see, for example, that usability is coming first for English. And French, you have to look where is usability? Why they don't speak usability? And design come before for French. So French maybe are correlated UX with UI more than English people are doing. So just copy a text, paste it on WordArt, and then you can already do text mining by your own, even if you don't know anything. Here I use user experience word, but you can use whatever definition on internet. I would like to introduce you another tool that is free also. It's a tool that I use frequently to know the level of language I'm using for my text, or maybe to know which kind of user I'm talking about. So you can just paste your text here, called Hemingway application, and you can see the grade of the text you are writing here. So here you have, for example, 2 different reviews from book on Amazon, and it's quite pretty obvious that the last one is high level graduation, and the first one, maybe people, there's a lot of mistake, doesn't have the same level. So just to conclude, another tool I wish would be less expensive, but QEmotion works very efficiently. In fact, when you have a sentences, it affects some emotion based on Ekman model. So here, for example, too bad the texture feels greasy. The words are automatically affected to sadness or to disgust. So it works a lot, and you can put a huge amount of text, and they're able to make a summary there and make, okay, this product, you will feel happiness with this. Then you have 2 other tools, but honestly, you should be helped on this, at least with a data scientist if you want to use. It's Orange 3, R, and Excel Stats. So just a few takeaways to conclude. First, text mining can be used at any stage of your process. You can find text and word everywhere. In fact, you can be surprised, and you can ask me to find something, but even if your game doesn't exist, you can also find some competitor games to analyze. And you can avoid useless hours of research. So I hope you have tools that you can apply. Thank you for your attention.
Awesome. So I think we have questions. Oh, it's here. Okay. So which software should we use to data mine Steam comments?
In fact, I didn't take feedback from Steam. It was another website, so I take it from free. But I use Orange 3. It's a tool that is very, how to say, user experience friendly. So it's, even if you don't know anything about data, you can use Orange 3 for this.
So how do you deal with all different languages? Can French and English be enough to represent all of the player base?
In fact, this question is very touchy, because sometimes French and English people feel the same about one game. So it's easy, you just have to translate and you group it. But sometimes when you analyze, for example, French versus China, you have to be really careful. You cannot just group all the feeling, otherwise you will lose something. So what I do normally, I analyze first French, then English, and then I see if it matches, and I translate it and compare.
Is there, before I keep going, is there any questions in the audience? All right, let's keep going then. Does the length of the comment review affect the results?
It depends, because in fact I will also look to the standard deviation between comments. For example, on Just Dance, sometimes you have very short and sometimes you have very long, but it's not frequent to have long comments. On other games such as Gloomhaven, you have a lot of people express themselves a lot. So I always analyze the standard deviation of the number of words before doing the analysis.
What kind of software do you use to make your data analysis?
I think it's quite similar, but for example, just on occurrence, you can use WordArt and Wordle. It's free and easy. But if you have to go deeper, Orange 3 is good. Excel Stats working also pretty well.
And using text mining for MVP or future features, will it answer only desires of your existing user base? The self-fulfilling prophecy.
You should be always careful. In fact, I'm like a ninja. I love using many different techniques and to see if there is some matching everywhere. The fact is that text mining is free and very easy to do. When you have the habit to do this, it takes just 3 hours, and it lets you time to make interview, to ask people for more detail, or to make an online study.
Any questions in the audience? Yeah, there's a question over there.
Hi. So semantics can be really tricky sometimes. How do you deal with some edge cases, like for example, the sarcasm or something similar?
In fact, QEmotion is able to detect sarcasm very pretty. Today, text mining in 2000. This year, yes, it's okay. 2 years ago was not working at all. And QEmotion is able to guess when you are using sarcasm.
Nice. Thank you.
Other questions? No, yeah. Try not to throw from the back, because then people don't see it coming and they can't protect their heads.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Emmanuel.
Bye-bye.